Funding for the Maddy Report is made possible by grants from BNSF Railway, moving our economy for 160 years. Harris Ranch Resort, providing Western hospitality and award-winning cuisine. The Wonderful Company, committed to growing a better world. Comcast, connecting people to the moments and experiences that matter most. Producers Dairy, nourishing one life at a time. The Spencer Family, and Fresno State Associated Students Incorporated, students serving students. The Maddy Report is also made possible thanks to contributions from Cook Land Company, E&J Gallo Winery, the Fresno Association of Realtors, and California Manufacturing and Engineering Company. From the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's 4 public universities, this is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Blake Zante.
Welcome to the Maddy Report. I'm Blake Zante, Executive Director of the Maddy Institute. Today we're diving into local government with Fresno City Council President Mike Karbassi. Council President Karbassi was elected to the Fresno City Council in 2019 to represent District 2. Councilmember Karbassi, thanks for joining the Maddy Report today. Really
Great to be here, Blake.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about your background. You're born and raised in Fresno. You're a second-generation business owner. How has your background shaped your priorities as a Fresno City Council member?
Well, the theme for this year that I mentioned at the inauguration in January is gratitude. My family came to this country over 40 years ago. My father is a student, my mother is a student, and they ended up coming back and staying here because they were fleeing a revolution. And only in America can you come to this country and in one lifetime start a business, give back into the system, and raise your kids here and for them to be successful. So I'm extremely grateful for being an American and growing up in this community. I grew up in Northwest Fresno, which is right in the heart of the district I represent. So places like Fig Garden Village and Bullard High School, the Fig Garden Loop, El Paseo Shopping Center, the San Joaquin River. I mean, that encompasses District 2.
Right, and speaking of District 2, covering West Fresno, what are some of the issues you have worked to address during your time on the council?
Well, so we have a lot of infrastructure challenges, from broken sidewalks, whether they're in neighborhoods or in parks, the condition of our parks, trying to improve them, and making sure we get our fair share of Measure P revenue, which we pay a lot into, to regional challenges like transportation, but especially public safety. And that's a very, very big important issue to me. We've had a lot of success in the last 4 years, millions more than ever before being spent on neighborhood infrastructure. Veterans Boulevard, which connects really both sides of my district that are on the 99. That's been a big boon to future development. My goal by the time I'm done is to get more options for shopping, for grocery stores west of 99, because really there's an old saying, tale of two cities in Fresno being Shaw Avenue. That's not correct. It's the 99. Because everyone west of 99, that's forgotten Fresno. And we need to do a much better job of making sure they're able to come into the fold and get the same benefits and resources that we have.
I certainly want to dive into some of those issues you talked about later in our show. But earlier today, you and I were at an event together, and in your remarks, you mentioned the relationship between the city and the county, something we've asked other guests on the show about before. And you talked about it improving, and it seems to be, heading in a different direction as maybe it previously was in other years. So can you just talk a little bit more about what are the changes in that relationship?
Yeah, this is something really important to me. Just last week, I went to the Clovis City Council meeting, my first time there. Mayor Vong Monatu is a great guy, and we get along very well. Different political parties, but we have that same sense of community, both coming from immigrant families and having strong ties to our parents. I think elected officials are people. We are all relatable. When you put the ego and arrogance aside, and if you focus, like in my case, I have term limits, so I have so much time here. When you focus on results, and these are not Democratic results or Republican results, public safety is for everybody, right? Sidewalk or pothole that's eliminated, that's not a Republican or Democratic answer. So basically, the collaboration is important to me. One area of recent success has been the Fresno City and County Tax Sharing Agreement. So you had Buddy Mendez and Brian Pacheco on the board side. You had council members Maxwell and Perea and myself on the city side. And after 4 years of no agreement, within a year, we negotiated an agreement that was very fair to both sides. And now we can do things like the Sarah's Court project that you saw in southeast Fresno that creates housing that's more affordable. Without a tax sharing agreement, can't grow, can't have more jobs, can't have more housing. And we are in a housing crisis in our state.
Tell us a little bit about that. Some of our viewers may not exactly understand what is a tax sharing agreement.
Yeah.
Can you just break it down? Why is that important? And what does it mean for the city of Fresno and the county?
Super important. If you love going to a park and having it maintained and clean, or if you love being able to call, God forbid you call 911 and having a quick response and a professional response, whether it's police or fire, all that is paid for by taxpayers. The city of Fresno does not run deficits. We have balanced budgets as required by the voters. So that means we have to bring money in. So we get a portion of our sales tax and property tax. We split it with the county. The state gets their portion, the city gets their portion, the county gets their portion. We renegotiated a rate that really gives the city a larger portion because we provide so many services day to day to the residents versus the county. So that now we know we're going into tough fiscal times. I really want to avoid as much as possible burdening anybody with what are called taxes, which is a really dangerous word. If we're going to do that, that means better negotiation. And that negotiation resulted in being able to bring in more revenue without raising taxes.
Thank you. We'll be right back after this break. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Councilmember Karbassi, thanks again for joining us. Something you focused on during your tenure is public safety, and it's been a big priority for you. As you mentioned earlier, something that you signed was the Safer Fresno Budget Pledge, and you were committed to increasing the number of police and firefighters. I think that's something generally a lot of folks want is more police and more firefighters. But why? What does that mean? What does it actually do for the city of Fresno? And what are some of the challenges into getting to that point?
Yeah, so one of my favorite Reagan jokes was, how do you know a politician is lying? Their lips are moving. And so I didn't make a whole lot of promises in the campaign, but there's one I made, and that was the Safer Fresno Budget Pledge, because I know at my core, I really believe the biggest responsibility the mayor and council has is the safety of our residents and our businesses. So I did sign that pledge. I voted on every budget except for one because all those budgets increased resources for police and fire services. It's important because when someone calls 911, Blake, it's the worst moment in their lives. And we need to make sure that as a city, we're doing our basic job of making sure they're safe, that the dispatcher answers the call. We get a response very quickly. We protect their property, their lives, their pets, everything. And that's just a fundamental. We can't afford to get it wrong. So what I did learn was 2019 versus now, we've really been able to reduce violent crime. And a lot of that comes from the council and mayor working together. We have an amazing permanent police chief in Mindy Casto, who is fantastic. And we also have a fire chief in Billy Alcorn. These are all very dedicated public servants who want to make sure their departments and their personnel are doing the best job they can.
Illegal street racing, something that's been a problem in sideshows in Fresno. It's been a growing concern for a number of years. What actions have you worked on to address this issue, and have they been effective?
So the street racing is something that really peaked, especially in Northwest Fresno and Southeast Fresno during the pandemic. And what happened was 2 days after Christmas, I think in 2020, there was a terrible car accident where I say accident, but really could have been avoided. An illegal street racer hit a truck carrying 5 members of a family. 3 of them died. Allison Chang was one of them. She was 17 years old, valedictorian at an editor of the school paper at I think Sunnyside High. And that really affected me a lot. We're a small town, and we're 6 degrees of separation, right? So to see Allison's story, how that was avoidable, that really forced me into action because we could prevent street racing. So we did Operation Stay Safe, Don't Race, working with PD, Sheriff's Department, Bureau of Automotive Repair. Basically, here's what we learned. Punitive damages work to correct behaviors. So we impounded vehicles. Points got added to people's driving records. Their insurance rates skyrocketed. And guess what? The racing stopped. Now, we still have speeding on our roads. But for the most part, Operation Stay Safe, Don't Race, and setting up the race hotline, which still exists, 621 RACE, These things have helped a lot to reduce the problem. And I can say street racing has gone down a lot, but we still have a speeding problem in Fresno.
Something you've worked on, speaking of streets, are streets, gutters, infrastructure, improving sidewalks in the city of Fresno. Obviously, aside from helping with traffic and making neighborhoods look nicer, Veterans Boulevard. How do infrastructure projects like this not only help improve traffic, but also public safety in the city of Fresno?
Great question. So when I was a candidate running for council back in 2018, 2019, I did a lot of ride-alongs, and there was one call. We were in Northwest off of Herndon, and we got a call on the west side of Highway 99. We were one of the last to arrive because there was no clear way of getting around. You had to go through Herndon, and everyone's gone on that on-ramp, knows what that's like, and it's just awful. So Veterans creates a much faster response time. I mean, within just moments, you're over the overpass, over the high-speed rail and regular rail lines, and you're there. So really, it makes it possible for EMS, for fire, for police to get to where they need to go. Again, like I said, making sure the west area gets those services the rest of us depend on every day.
What are the biggest public safety challenges still facing Fresno right now? And what are some things that the city of Fresno is working on to be able to address those challenges?
Yeah, I would say some of the biggest challenges are people that are distracted drivers. They're just texting on their phones and not paying attention. You have drivers that go right through red lights. They don't slow down. Those are some ongoing issues. Our focus has been on violent crime. Now, we're still giving out tickets. We're still doing those things. And it's not about finding somebody, it's about correcting behaviors. But I do believe that we have to do more. And this is not just a Fresno problem, this is a statewide problem. We also live in a state where I love California, but there are a lot of things we do wrong when it comes to public safety, which is why the voters supported Prop 36 on both sides of the aisle. People were tired of no results. We have to start prosecuting more crimes. We have to start penalizing people that are keeping the rest of us unsafe. Like, I'm not gonna knock you for being on your phone. Just don't do it when you drive, because why should I be at a red light, stopped, safe, following the law, and you hit me from behind and can cause all kinds of damage, or you do that to a family? And our job is to make sure that we correct those behaviors.
Thank you. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back after this. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Councilmember Karbassi, affordable housing in the city of Fresno. You were just talking before this about the Welcome Home program, something that you've worked on. Can you just talk generally also, though, about some of the recent steps that the city has taken to create more affordable housing?
Yeah, this is a real challenge statewide, but I think Fresno's an outlier. We've done a lot more to address the unhoused issue, to make sure we have beds available for those that want to take services. Other cities haven't had much luck with that. When it comes to affordable housing, there's two sides to it. There's housing for folks that just can't afford it at all, and it's government subsidized housing, which the Welcome Home Project provides. And then there's housing for people like you and me that, we, like anyone else, we have to live within our means, and it's getting more and more difficult to be able to afford just market rate housing in Fresno. So it's definitely a supply issue. More housing creates more jobs, also keeps more of our taxes here in Fresno. All those folks moving to Madera County, they work here, they use our services, they use our roads, they use our police and fire, but they pay their taxes in Madera. And that's been really a financial drain and a brain drain on Fresno. So when it comes to Welcome Home, projects like that, what makes Welcome Home so amazing is that most of those projects that the government subsidizes, that our taxpayers subsidize, they cost like $500,000 a unit. Welcome Home, with the land from the ground up to when it's finally built, will cost about $212,000 per door, which is a very big deal. It saves the taxpayers a bunch of money. But also, because it's modular housing, we can build it within a year. I'm talking about raw dirt to a finished product, a nice looking complex like anything else you'd see. So these are creative ways we can update our codes and our policies to be able to incorporate new technology. That's some of the things that Fresno has done. And the tax sharing agreement, again, I go back to that. It was a major achievement that will also help behind the scenes convince the investors in our community City and county can get along, so we're going to invest in Fresno, not go somewhere else.
The state has worked to address affordable housing as well. Do you think that what the state is looking at and some of their policies that have been passed into the legislature, are those helpful to the city of Fresno or to local governments?
Not at all.
Do there need to be some changes?
They need to reform CEQA. The California Environmental Quality Act, there's always a role to play to make sure what we're doing won't disturb our environment or people that live in the neighborhoods with emissions and things like that. But CEQA has been weaponized by activists that are paid and funded by outside dollars that have directly resulted in the higher cost of housing in communities across the state, including Fresno. If you wonder why it's more expensive to buy a home, it's because we have a supply issue, because we are basically being hijacked by economic terrorists with frivolous lawsuits that weaponize this state policy. And I'm sorry, I'm fired up because this is really what makes it difficult for us to do our jobs on both sides of the aisle. Unless my party and unless Sacramento wants to reform CEQA, it's a joke. They're not going to do anything to fix the problem.
Yeah, and certainly CEQA reform has been a hot topic for a number of years in the state. Let's talk infrastructure. How does the city consider and prioritize infrastructure needs? Fresno is a huge city of over 500,000 people. And then what are some current projects that are happening right now?
Yeah, so we have enough surface roads to get from here to Tennessee, believe it or not. There's a lot of roads in Fresno. We're the 5th largest in California by population, but by area, we're the 6th largest. There's a lot of roads to cover and to maintain. There's a little bit of subjectivity, so a council member can say, this is my priority, I'm working on that. But we also have a condition index, a PCI score, so we know what roads are worse off than others. And it's not what you'd think. It's not just existing the older neighborhoods versus new neighborhoods. It's kind of all over across the board. Every district has high priority roads. There's 2 things we can do. One is a funding mechanism. So if you ask yourself, why do all the new neighborhoods have nice, clean roads? It's because there's something called a CFD, Community Facilities District. It's like a HOA without the drama. The neighbors pay a portion of a fee in their property tax, and that stays in the neighborhood to regularly maintain roads, so that PCI score stays low. What we have to do is rely on things like Measure C, which is our countywide transportation tax, to be able to allocate money as best as we can to fix some of the roads that are in the greatest need. And what we need now, if there's a new Measure C, is to focus on existing neighborhoods, sidewalks, and roads to make sure we get rid of the potholes. But we just don't have the money. It's a $1 billion problem without $1 billion available to fix it.
Speaking more broadly, as you begin your next term, you were elected last year. What are some top priorities for Fresno on your radar in the near future?
Yeah, so I mean, look, it's remember the basics, public safety. I mention that a lot because not something we can afford to mess up. But it's also about making it easier for people, whether you're a student, you're a senior, or you're somewhere in the middle, live in this city, which should really be an affordable place to live. And that means better priced housing, being very careful about any taxes or fees we raise to make sure they're as low as possible. It's really important to ensure our parks are clean, so if you want to go out there and have a good time, you can. It's really basic quality of life issues. I'm not looking to change the world, I'm just looking to make sure government in its limited form works better for everyone in the community. And it's not easy. It requires a lot of negotiation with colleagues. It requires a lot of, again, like I said, I say this again because check your ego at the door. We only have so much time to be here. And wouldn't it feel good to be a part of positive change as opposed to just getting embroiled in drama like happened a few years ago at the council? We don't want to ever go back to those days. I always joke with Supervisors Chavez and Bredefeld, now that they left the city, we're going to send all the crazy over there. They can deal with it. But I tease with them all the time. We still get along and we still work together.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Councilmember Mike Karbassi. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Councilmember Karbassi, as we wrap up our time here, something you joked about right before we went to the break was the drama on Fresno City Council. And you've always, tried to push, for a a common sense, common ground approach during your tenure. The Maddy Institute encourages bipartisan cooperation among our regional elected officials. While City Council is a nonpartisan position, how do you foster that relationship building that's needed on the dais at Fresno City Hall? And how do you work across the aisle with your colleagues, regardless of their political affiliation or ideology?
Yeah, so I think any elected who's really lucky to be in a position like this, let's not forget, it's a very special thing when the voters will select you to be a representative of them, of their will. If you're focused on results, you will work with anybody and put things aside to be able to find common ground. So my job is to make sure my district has the resources necessary so when somebody calls me, I can solve their problem. That means I have to, by definition, work with other people that disagree with me, people that have positions I can even despise at times. But again, I've got to count to 4 out of 7 to get a simple majority to get things passed. So I've learned out of that sheer need to be able to kind of put my own feelings aside and just try to find what is this person really thinking of? What's their motivation? It's easier with some than others. I've been very lucky to have been able to work with my colleagues, which is why I was elected council president in January. At the same time, I don't have to compromise my values to do that. I can still stick to my values and speak my mind, but be able to say, okay, well, this is how you feel. How can I help you get to a win? After a while, you just build enough rapport where people trust you. They don't agree with you, but they trust you. And I think common sense is the key to all that. If I can just govern with common sense, people will say, I don't agree with you, but I understand.
How can Fresno residents stay engaged with their elected officials? Oftentimes I think people have a hard time following what's going on in local government. They're busy, they're going to work, they're taking care of kids.
Right.
Something the Maddy Institute tries to foster is greater civic engagement. So what are some ways, folks could either reach out to you or stay in tune with what's going on at City Hall?
Yeah, it's difficult. Like you said, folks, you would hope they can entrust their representatives, but it's really important that the people you elect know how you feel. And if they don't, you get in that fishbowl at City Hall or at the Capitol building or in DC and you forget. So it's very important to, one, if you have a block party, invite your councilman. They will show up. I would hope they would show up. We do newsletters every month to let people know this is what we've worked on, this is what's coming forward. I encourage people just on YouTube, if you either want to take a nap or you could watch our council meetings. Hopefully you won't fall asleep. I joke about that. But watch the council meetings, read what's on the agenda, or just watch local media to get kind of a feel of what's happening. But also be a critical thinker. Don't just take things at face value because there's always an angle there. So neighborhood watch is another thing you can do to really engage. You want to serve on a county commission or a city commission. There's lots of opportunities. You go to fresno.gov and go to the clerk's website. Those openings are listed, but just engage with us. That's the biggest thing. Social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff.
Certainly a lot of different ways to reach out and engage, which is great. Your last question for you today on our program, you're a Fresno State alumni. And for young people who want to get involved in politics, what are some words of advice that you have for them, maybe looking back at your time as a Fresno State student?
I had a great experience at Fresno State. I learned, in a sense, how to handle loss at Fresno State because I was a student body senator for student affairs. I had a great experience with that, but I also lost a lot of elections too. And I remember I was in my entrepreneurship class and somebody gave me, after I had lost the city council race when I was a student for the same seat, she gave me a paper of Lincoln, all the times Lincoln lost, and I thought, okay, I really appreciate her doing that. It was very sweet of her, but I don't want to read that right now. But after years of just kind of, you get knocked around a little bit, you learn, you have to really just push through. If you really believe in yourself and you listen to other people, because again, this is a representative position, I would say it's important to have some grit, some tough skin, but also follow your heart. And really, if you believe in what you're trying to do, eventually the people will respond to that. Sincerity is a very powerful tool, I think, in this business of politics. So.
Well, Council President Karbassi, that's all the time we have.
Great.
Thanks for joining the Maddy Report.
Good to
really
see you.
Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you for watching the Maddy Report. To learn more about the Maddy Institute, visit maddyinstitute.com. The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about today's episode of the Maddy Report, please visit our website at maddyinstitute.com.